Hi, this is the Social Gelo with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Gelo with Angelo show.
What's up, and welcome to the Social Gelo with Angelo podcast. Today I'm here with Bobby Seronio, and he's a part of the Kajukenbo Hana. Again, disclaimer, I am not the official Kajukenbo podcast. This is the Social Gelo with Angelo podcast. I want to thank you for watching. And before we get started, if you like what you see, you like what you've heard so far, just hit subscribe and hit like and hit the notifications so you can keep up with the show. So, Bobby, what's up, man?
What's up, my brother, man? Thank you for this opportunity to jump online with you.
Oh, no, thanks for coming out to meet me in the cyberspace.
Right?
So, Bobby, how did I meet Bobby? Well, I met Bobby the same way I meet a lot of people. I'm online and I'm posting my videos and I'm posting questions. And Bobby came in and threw a really cool comment. And then later we started talking, and he turns out that he has his son, Bobby the III, is fighting for Belator. And Bobby just made it very apparent to me that my accent's fucked up, and I've been saying Belator for the last 6 years, which is probably why people don't take me seriously. And I'm glad. I always say, don't take me too seriously. And then Bobby was a nice guy. He didn't bring it up, but yeah. So yeah, man, that's awesome. So you got your son fighting for Belator. How is that working out?
You know, it's funny that growing up, like when my kids started karate, right? We were just doing a lot of sport karate, and then we got on the pro circuit. You know, we started winning championships. All my kids, and actually my school was one of the top schools in California. You know, because we fought a lot on the NBL, NASCAR pro circuit. You know, and then my son was about 13. I knew he was going to high school, and I said, well, you know, your dad's 5'7", your mom's 5'2". I don't think you're gonna be dunking the ball, hitting home runs, you know, and stuff like that, and running for touchdowns. I think you can play soccer or golf or wrestle. I know I can teach you golf and wrestling to get you a scholarship. Everything was trying to get them to get a scholarship. So all my kids wrestled. And it just so happened my youngest, she became an All-American national champion, you know, to that as well as that. But my son had some bad luck his last junior and senior year with a busted up knee, and then he wrestled in junior college, and then at one point he was ranked 5th in the state, you know, and then he hurt his shoulder, and then one day we just talked about it. And he goes, "Man, let's try an MMA event," you know, because I really truly believe if your instructor teaches you how to fight, you can fight anywhere. The only thing that changes sometimes is the rules. And, you know, and on the street, there's no rules, right? So I said, hell, let's just, you know, let's use our sport karate and wrestling and see how we do. He jumped in. He won his first fight. He won his second fight. He knocked out a Muay Thai guy, his third fight. And then he took a break because he had knee surgery. And then his fourth fight, he came on and he went up a weight class to 145. And then right after that, we got a call from Belator, seeing if they wanted to make his debut, because they wanted to sign him 3 years ago, but I thought, well, he's not ready just yet, because, you know, he was only 18, 19 at the time, and he can possibly win the first 2-3 fights, but we had to train for the guys who are veterans, who have the 5 fight, 6 fights. So one day we went up to Dave Terrell Jiu-Jitsu. I don't know if you know Dave Terrell. He was he's a UFC back in, I think, a long time ago. He's one of Cesar Gracie's first black belts.
Yeah, I recognize.
So he went up there, and my son was getting tapped out left and right. And I said, "Oh, we're not ready to go pro yet." So 3-4 years later, you know, he was out there and he competes at jiu-jitsu at a pretty high level, no gi, and we made our debut, you know, which is pretty exciting.
And then just a quick note for my listeners. I'm going to share my screen here real quick. He mentioned David Terrell. Here he is right here. He's an American mixed martial artist, retired American professional MMA fighter. He fought in the UFC and Pancrase Pancrase?
Yep.
I'm doing it again. I'm doing it again, aren't I?
That's okay, brother. You know, and he was doing ADCC, you know, before it became really popular, you know.
Yeah, and it's funny that he fought for Pancrase. Oh, damn it. So it's funny that he fought for them. Because when I first came out to Japan, I fought off an offshoot from the same venue. So yeah, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So going into your story, man, if you don't mind going there, how did you get into Kajukenbo? I mean, like we're doing like like a Quentin Tarantino thing. Like we just started now, and I want to go back. So yeah,
that's how my mind works too. You know, I'm all over the place anyway. So you know,
good. Then this is gonna go really smooth then.
It's our listeners that got to catch up.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. Right. I hope you're keeping notes, everyone.
Well, you know, geez, how I got a Kajukenbo, it wasn't a meaning of getting into it. I was kind of born into it, right? My first instructor his name was John Ramos, Grandmaster John Ramos. He's the brother of Tony Ramos. And so he's also my godfather. So I started training Kajukenbo back in 75. And all I really can remember back then from 5 years old till I stopped maybe about 9 years old, the culture was pretty rough. You know, even though he was my godfather, my uncle, I think he was really mean to me. I told him I hated him, you know, because I didn't give him kiss and hug after I left to go home. And he basically told me, because, you know, son, in the dojo, you're just another student. Outside of here, I love you. You're my godson. You're my nephew. I love you and whatnot. But at a very young age, the culture of that was pretty mean, you know, and you grew up. I took a lot of that as a kid, and then I started doing Kajukenbo again in what's that, mid 80s, because my uncle closed his school down in the late 70s. You know, so I joined it with one of his black belts back then. But how it all kind of started was with my grandpa, Bobby Seronio. You know, he grew up with the Imperados. He actually lived with them too, and I believe Grandmaster Mitch Powell gave me a lot of information. He even probably knows more about my family than I know about it, you know, because he's a historian about that stuff too. And you know, and all that, I just used to listen to all the stories, you know, about he was one of the only black belts to teach at Kamuki and I think Wahiwa back then, you know, and then, you know, one of his students was, you know, Gaylord. And then also that was helping, I guess, my grandpa was my uncle Tony Ramos. And then they brought it over, I guess, to the mainland in the 60s. So again, I had no choice. I think a lot of my cousins and everybody that was part of the family had no choice. But yeah, that's how it just all started. From my uncle's little dojo to one of his black belts in the garage. And then I continued fighting, you know, doing sport fighting and stuff until I had kids and we started in the garage.
And it's funny that you mentioned like you had no choice, and to have no choice, like so when I first started cross training with the Gracie Baja schools,
right,
their slogan is "Jiu-Jitsu for everyone," and I thought that was kind of funny because like the first thing I thought of was like Kajukenbo is not for everyone. Like if we had a slogan, it's not for everyone. So to say you had no choice in an art that is not for everyone is a rough choice.
It is. And you know what's funny about that? When we moved from the garage to the rec center, and then I got my first dojo, one of my black belts is like, "Hey, cuz," I go, "What's up?" And his name is Sean Villacarlos. He's one of my first black belts, and he continued to be my black belt till this day. But back then, he was like, "Hey, can we talk?" And I was like, "Yeah. Tell me about it." He goes, "Hey, are you gonna calm down a little bit with the curriculum and stuff? Because if you notice, we lose a lot more students, a lot more men and adults, and if we're going to go into another dojo and we have to pay overhead, you know, I suggest maybe you kind of throttle back a little bit. You know, back then I was kind of young. I'm like, it's not meant for them if they're not around, you know. But unfortunately, I think I would have learned. I should have listened back then. You know, we would have might have been a lot bigger by now. You know,
Yeah.
but you're absolutely right. It's not meant for everyone, and everyone that's able to get into Kajukenbo, especially with great instructors, it's a privilege. You know, because sometimes it doesn't make sense. It's like a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for a lot of people, it doesn't make sense. And if anybody who's watching who doesn't know what I'm talking about, just to give you an idea, like I've had black belts from other arts come in and be like, "What's going on? Like, what is going on?" And I thought that was like an American thing. And I came to Japan, and they're a little more rougher, right? Japan, those karate guys, they're not even wearing pads; they're doing the full
they're very
contact,
traditional,
right?
right?
They're doing full contact fights. So like, okay, these people will probably. okay, let's just go over like defense number one, and they're just like, wait, what? The guy goes on the ground, and then you do what? They're just like, so, yeah, definitely. I think not for everyone's a good slogan for us. So we left off on your story here. You're in the mid '80s,
right?
And then like in your story, we went from mid '80s, and then you opened your own dojo. But I kind of want to go back to the mid '80s. Because you said you trained from when you were 5 to 9, and you came back in the mid '80s to continue your training. How old were you in the mid '80s at that point?
So about '85, I was 15. So
okay.
I started training with Arnell Conja at the time, and he was one of my uncle John's black belts, and also he was a black belt underneath Mr. Pat Salientes. They were actually at that time was Asian Knights, but he moved back to San Francisco. So I trained with them from like 85 to maybe around 89 around then, you know. And then I moved to Vallejo, and from Vallejo I trained with Amo Bautista for a little bit, you know, and a lot of my seniors was like Woody Sims, Bobby Wilson, you know, those guys. And I stuck with Mr. Bautista to maybe 94, 95. And then I opened my school in 2000.
All right. So when in the point in this when did you ended up, well, obviously you had no choice. Like, one of the questions I asked people that had, well, I don't know if they had a choice. Well, yeah, you know, your family's in it, so you had no choice. These people were just wondering, like, well, there is a door, there is an exit sign there. So if I don't want to keep going through this, I can always leave. But there's always a point for those people, and even for yourself, that you say you had no choice, where you realize this is something that you love to do, and that you're going to end up going for the black belt. Whether you want to have a black belt or you just want to try to test yourself through that black belt test. When did you realize that? Like, when did you realize, all right, this is obviously, you made a choice, right? You came back in the mid '80s saying, I'm going to get back into this. But when did you realize, like, not only am I going to get back into this, but I'm going to end up going for that black belt test? When did you kind of think about that? When did that hit you?
Actually, you know, it really never hit me. Back in the '80s, I started training again because my friends were training, you know, and I knew their instructor. And at that time, it was really more of just a fighting school. You know, we just go in there and we fight on cement, and then we go to tournaments and we'd win. You know, that's what mainly about. You know, and we didn't do a whole lot of self-defense stuff. We did enough for the belt promotions, but as a kid, we didn't do a whole lot of a lot of knowledge until I got to Amo Bautista School. And then because he was one of my uncle Tony Ramos's black belts as well, so I went with him because it was his family, right? So, and in there I got to meet a lot of great black belts, you know, and learn a lot of different self-defense stuff. But I didn't really get to understand what our self-defense was until I really started teaching it, right, and having students. But primarily back then, I just loved to fight. You know, I just loved to, you know, because I wrestled in high school. I think I'm a better grappler now than I was in high school because I really didn't know how to diet and all that stuff. And you know, one year I broke my ankle. Next year I got pneumonia. But I always loved grappling. I always loved it because I thought it would help me be a better fighter. A kid growing up in the city, because that's all we did was fight. So I thought, okay, grappling. I'm not a big guy, but if I learn how to grapple, it's going to help me, you know, in fighting. I didn't know it was going to transition to what we do today, because when people say Kajukenbo is the first mixed martial arts, I think it's false. Because MMA is a sport. Sport karate is a sport. Kajukenbo is a way of life. It's not only just an art, but it's how you kind of look at things a lot differently than other martial artists. I'm sure other martial artists don't think, okay, well, if I kick one of the balls, take him down, break his arm, he yells, I punch him in his chest and collapse his lungs, he's dead. But I know that's our art.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a visual, right? We get that visual of how we're supposed to defend ourselves. And so I didn't really get a lot of knowledge until I opened up my own school, because I always felt your students are an extension of who you are as an instructor and even as a person, right? So I don't know if that answered that question, but I never really thought about becoming a black belt. I never even thought about having a school. Things just happen, and then you just put your whole heart into it when it does.
And how was that transition, right? Going from fighting to teaching. When did that happen to you? Do you remember?
I guess 2004, right? And again, my cousin Sean, one of my black belts right now, he's like, "Hey, bro, are we going to be doing karate tournaments or?" I said, "No, we're just going to stay traditional." And then so we ended up doing one karate tournament and we lost. I lost my shit right then. I was like, I cannot lose. I hate losing. And then that's where I started to teach myself how to kick. A lot of, I don't know. I don't see a lot of Kajukenbo people. They don't do a lot of sparring, a lot of high level sport karate. Throughout my travels of years of a couple of decades, the only ones I probably seen out there was the Kenjis. Robert Kenji, he's like my brother. They're in Southern California. But I didn't see a lot of high level any Kajukenbos fighting at that high level in sport karate. Whether they didn't like it or whether they don't believe in it or whatever the case may be, But because of that one day we lost, I thought, I hate losing. I hate losing at everything we do. Ping pong, I don't know. Coloring, I don't know. And that's when the transition happened. That was my balance between we would never compete in karate tournaments and show our pinions or self-defense, because I think that for me, that stays at home. But the fighting and going out there and learning how to work distance and movement and how to get from point A to point B the fastest or see what they can bite on which fakes, and to challenge yourself. I like that type of stuff, whether it's wrestling or fighting or whatnot. I really, really, really competitive when it comes to that. And I love making our weakest person the dopest dude, or the dopest young lady, and going out there and getting that smile. That smile means everything when they win. So it was pretty easy, but because of that type, I guess, A personality, I just kept going until I figured how to win and how to make it better and then transition it into full contact. So.
And that school you had in 94, 2000s, you said 2000s.
Yeah.
Where was it?
We started out in my garage, and then we moved 2004. We moved to the rec center.
Sorry. What city or what area
Vallejo.
In Vallejo? Okay, and
Vallejo,
that's California.
yeah.
Okay, Vallejo, California.
Yeah.
And then I just because I'm geographically challenged. Vallejo, California. Where is that, like, in the greater scheme of things?
That's like about 45 minutes from from San Francisco.
Okay, all right. So
40 minutes from Oakland.
All right,
like
all right.
40 minutes from Sacramento. So
all right.
Start off Highway 80 right in the middle. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's where you had your first school then.
Yeah. It all stayed in Vallejo, and then I got a smaller 1,000 square foot spot, and then We've been in my last dojo is about 3,200 square feet, but COVID kind of leveled me out, man. And now I got some business partners, and I haven't announced it yet, but we got a new spot that's coming up in Vallejo or American Canyon, which is about 5,000 square feet. It's gonna have a full cage and everything.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
That's good. That's really, I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, I try not to go into the dark times. as I said it earlier, I try to avoid the dark times subject. But yeah, everyone got hit pretty hard there. But I'm happy to hear that you're bouncing out and getting ready for the next plan.
So I'm trying to,
So you were teaching. You started competing. You got upset when they lost that first tournament, and then you started hitting hard, getting in there. And then for you were wrestling. So like you were wrestling, you did Kajukenbo from ages 5 to 9, and then you were wrestling throughout high school, right? Yeah, wrestling throughout high school. So how was that? Like, you came from Kajukenbo and then you got into wrestling. So like a lot of people that I've had this story with, it's usually like the other way around. They were doing something else and they got into Kajukenbo. How was that, like going from Kajukenbo and then going into wrestling? How was your mentality in that, like in that aspect? Because you already did Kajukenbo and then you start wrestling. How was there any adjustments, or was there anything that like you kind of noticed in the way wrestling is approached and Kajukenbo was approached?
No, I was just a kid, and one of the main reasons why I was about 11 years old, and I got into a fight. I was beating this kid up, and he must have been about 3, 4 years older than me, and then he wrestled me down to the ground, and he sat on top of me, and he hit me a couple times, and it got broken up. And I said, man, when I get in high school, I'm going to wrestle, because I never want to have that happen to me ever again. And then I ended up loving the sport. But then I wasn't really high into it, like I think the only other school in my area that's high level wrestling is the Makalolois, Jeff Makalolo and them, and I consider them guys a sister school too. But yeah, for me, I believe wrestling and the way I teach my Kajukenbo and my sport karate fit hand in hand. That is that type of grind. It's that type of monotonous stuff. Like in wrestling, everybody has the same movements and the same techniques, right? But what makes it great, right? Like, what's a bad shot? A bad shot is no setup. So essentially, even in fighting, everybody knows the same things. But I think what differentiates those type of attacks is the setup into those red zones, And so for me, wrestling and fighting and Kajukenbo just fit like hand in glove.
Yeah. All right, cool. So you already had like you already knew, and I like that. Like, so you had a personal experience that made you say, "Hey, this is something I really need to work on."
Right.
Which is different, right? Some people go through something like that and they're like, this is something I want to avoid. Right? That's they go the other route. So that's really cool. You're like, hey, this is something, even though this wasn't something that I was just there's something there, and you went after that to get better at it.
Yeah, and it didn't help when I was in high school. I was smoking cigarettes and going to wrestling practice, but who was going to tell me different? We're just kids, man.
So when you got your Kajukenbo program together, did you end up incorporating wrestling in there, or was that a little later? All right, cool.
Absolutely. Like, I want to say we're different than a lot of Kajukenbo schools because of that. I approached my type of fighting and my philosophy for the athlete of today. And I mean that because sometimes I believe sometimes in Kajukenbo we train for an opponent that no longer exists. Those techniques we're doing back then that we learned as a kid and as an adult were the techniques for those people on Hawaii, those, I guess, sailors or whatnot. Nowadays, everybody and their mama knows how to do some type of grappling, do some type of Muay Thai, because they're watching TV, they're watching YouTube. They love their anime with Goku and stuff like that, because I'm a big Goku fan, right? And then they have freaking the UFC gym, right? So 9 out of 10, you fighting a low stance, looking for the growing shot, that is not going to work. You get a freaking freshman who's a prodigy who knows how to wrestle, he takes you to your back. So I always wanted to teach our guys and my kids for that type of athlete, for the type of athlete like me when I was younger. You want to teach, could I beat that guy in the street? That guy who has that attitude, who wants to just rip your soul open and piss on your face. You know what I mean? So that's my mentality. So like I always teach a kid, was it easier to teach him how to punch, kick, and do stretching than do Pinion 1? It's going to be a lot harder to teach a 5-year-old Pinion 1. It's going to take forever. So I would teach them backwards, the motor skills of the right. People say practice makes perfect. No, perfect practice makes perfect. And teach them the right fundamentals with movement, with hands, and make it fun at the same time. And then when they get a little bit older to comprehend these dances, because I get confused sometimes with some pinions and concentrations and self-defense. I'm like, what? Can we do that? And then I write it down in your Bible, and I have to rewrite it because I don't know what I just wrote. Put it on video.
Yeah. Oh no, man. I want to say, yeah, I was so happy when finally when technology finally got to a point where my camera was this big, because I was like, I couldn't even afford a camera growing up. So I was like, oh man. So I'd always ask my instructor, he had a VHS camera thing. And I'm like, can I watch your videos? And I said, he had like these old videos he made like in the 90s. And it's just like, I wish I had. It's like really cheesy stuff like, hello, my name is. I'd watch it, man. I'd be like, yeah, it's okay, good. I need to remember this, right? But like, yeah, it was different, right? You had to write everything down.
Yeah.
And then like, even if you wrote it down like you said, then later you do it, your instructor's like, no, that's not how you do it. Like, damn, it wasn't left. Was that my right? Was that my right foot? My left foot goes back. What?
But now everything's on YouTube, so and video, But yeah, that was my whole concept, and I've always been like back with my peers and like my grandmasters. Kajukenbo is not set on what you write on paper or what you put on video. It's what you taught and what evolves into, because we're not like Taekwondo or Okinawan. We don't all have the same dances. We can't enter a tournament and say, okay, this is traditional Kajukenbo, and everyone does Pinion 1 totally different. To where if you enter a WKU tournament and it's all Okinawan, Japanese, and Shotokan or whatnot, right? They're doing the same dance. But yeah, Kajukenbo is like, yeah, it's a way of life. It's a different mindset, and as long as it makes sense to you and it's practical and it works, then who's to say it's not?
And then this brings me to a question that was once asked to me. I ended up meeting Ramsey Dewey, the YouTuber guy who makes those videos that for women's, he doesn't challenge, but he likes getting women's self-defense videos. And he pressure tests them to see how they work in real life. And it just turns into a real funny thing where like, yeah, he's like, all right, so you grab the guy like this, and then like the person like just double legs him onto the ground. It's like, okay, so that didn't work, right? So he has like a series of that. But anyway, I ended up meeting him out in China. I didn't know he was a YouTuber. He's also an MMA coach. And he asked me a question, like, he's like, hey, man, I kind of want to do a video one day, but I want to ask you something. Can you show me a Kajukenbo technique? And I'm sitting there like, damn. So before I finish my story, I'll finish my story after I ask you the same question. What's a Kajukenbo technique, Bobby?
Kajukenbo technique. What they like to do is just kicking the balls. kick your ball, poke your eye, and hit you with a nice elbow. You know, spit in your face and give you a nice slap and make you do the dance, you know? You can visualize that, bro. I know you can.
Yeah,
right?
I can. Yeah, I didn't have an answer for him. I was like, I had to sit there for a while, and I'm like, there's definitely gonna be a kick to the groin. And he's like, well, how about something that you can use like in competition? And I'm like, all right, okay. One thing that I've seen a lot of Kajukenbo guys do is the ridge hand strike to the nose. So like I can say maybe like a back fist, back fist parry, ridge hand strike to the nose. You may find many, but not all Kajukenbo schools may or may not. Dude, I sound like a fucking politician. So like, I cannot confirm nor deny that maybe these techniques are used. At the end, he's like, I don't know if we can shoot this video, man. I'm like, no, don't worry about it. I don't think I don't want
to. You know, I always tell my kids this, and all my students. When I was younger, and my dad, you know, actually, my dad never seen me fight, and he's a black belt until Hawaii, until I was an adult. But he never seen me fight as a kid. But one thing he told me, he goes, if you can use your front leg like you use your front hand as a jab, you'll be dangerous. So that always stuck with me. So like all my kids, all my students, when we're fighting, whether it's left leg front, right leg front, you got to watch out for that first kick. That kick controls everything. Side kicks to the hip, side kicks to the leg, side kicks to the face. If you can use that like a jab, you know, you'd be pretty dangerous. So, and that's one technique we've always lived with. It was a side kick. That's very essential to establishing that distance. You know, dude, were you able to see my son's fight?
I have not seen your son's fight.
Oh man,
yeah. No, now that I got the name, I'm gonna do what I always do. My problem is there's too many fights, man.
Yeah,
there's just too many fights. And now that I know people that are in the game, now I feel bad. So like now I prioritize like, okay, wait, I gotta watch my buddy. I gotta watch my he's the coach. I gotta watch his fighters fight.
Right.
And then I got the people like outside of that are like, hey, you gotta watch this top person fight. And I'm like, I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna get to that. But now that I have your son's name, I want to watch the fights.
Yeah, it was really nice.
I'm gonna binge watch the fights like I do on one of those nights that my wife's like, hey, you know, I'm gonna watch whatever girl show she's gonna watch. Go in the man cave.
You know, it was really cool that I don't know who the announcer was. I don't know if it was Josh the Punk Thompson or I don't know, but they did their homework. And there was like, well, Bobby Seronio's family is, you know, deep in lineage. He comes from a fighting background, like, you know, Mr. Hackleman, Chuck Liddell. And it was really nice to have them put Kajukenbo back there. I think it was a big move for us to get Kajukenbo mentioned again on national TV. You know, because like you said, Kajukenbo, there's a lot of great Kajukenboists out there. You know, unfortunately, like some of them just like to keep it within themselves, you know, not venture off, you know. But the ones who do, I think they're pretty successful. And it was really a blessing to hear our art be announced on national TV, you know.
And then
that was pretty dope.
You being in the game, and this is something that I'm always telling people, like when I came out to Japan and I met the people, I started training with the people I trained. I said, what's Kajukenbo? And trying to explain to them how we're everywhere but unseen. we're everywhere. And like and when I started doing this podcast and started listening, when I typed in Kajukenbo podcast, I kept finding interviews on random YouTube channels, podcasts about martial arts, or sometimes other topics, but they'd have like a business success and they'd be interviewing some dojo owner. And then they start telling their stories, and I start realizing like, oh man, a lot of Golden Gloves boxers, a lot of Muay Thai champions.
Yep.
A lot of world champions in MMA, a lot of world champions in other stuff like wrestling, stuff that like is like part of our acronym: Ka, karate, Ju, judo, jiu-jitsu. I'll just say grappling for the Jew. Ken for
Right.
Kempo, Kung Fu, we'll just say Kung Fu for the Ken, and Bo for boxing, kickboxing, which is going to include that whole acronym. We can
Right.
find a champion in any part of that acronym that's a Kajukenbo guy. He just doesn't wear a Kajukenbo t-shirt, or she doesn't wear a Kajukenbo t-shirt when
Right.
they walk out and they step into that ring. So, like, my question to you, being in the game, how many Kajukenbo people do you know of in the game right now, like in MMA and that kind of thing?
I don't know any. I know a lot of people, they like to train stuff. My cousin's school, Train for Life, they're Kajukenbo. They're like in the next city. But I don't know that many people that wrestle, that do sport karate, um, that are competing in MMA sport as well. I don't know that many. But maybe we'll come across one or two in the amateurs, but not as pros. And if there are any, I suggest they do like us, represent our art. Bobby walks out, it says Seronio Kajukenbo. His fight shirts, he walks out in his gi, his black belt. I'm very proud of Kajukenbo, our lineage, and what it's done for me and my family and some of my friends. But I think we need to do a better job about announcing them. Like, I never announced my son has 20 junior world championships in sport karate, or my daughters or my whole team. I kind of kept it quiet, but I think I should have done a better job and celebrated them when they were winning than trying to stay super humble. I think I should have known the difference between humble and being arrogant. And we've never been arrogant, and just celebrating your kids and your students' achievements. I don't think that's, you know, I think we got to do a better job, even as instructors. Because I'm sure Mr. Hackelman has a lot of great champions out there that he doesn't mention either. A lot of great up and comers that he probably doesn't mention either, or other Kajukenbo guys out there who are MMA. And I think we got to do a better job of celebrating Kajukenbo when it does reach a higher level. Like my nephew Jacob Makololo. I mean, he's boxing now. He's a pro boxer, but a lot of Kajukenbo people don't know he's a state qualifier. He's a national champion. He wrestled at D1, I think in Colombia. Stuff like that. We can go down the line. I think a lot of great Kajukenbo kids that came up that we didn't get to celebrate too early. Like I said, my son, my nephews, and everybody else, and all of our extended family. And I think that's a problem. We got to celebrate them now.
Yeah, and that's something that, like, I know they're there. Like,
Yeah.
I know what I'm a Kajukenbo black belt, and now, like, I know about people that do Kajukenbo involved in different sports, because if you end up in the private pages, like the exclusive pages of Kajukenbo, like you do Kajukenbo, you end up in those Facebook pages, and then you start seeing it, right? Like, hey, my son's wrestling, he just won this championship. Oh, my daughter is doing, this tournament, and she just won this tournament, or my son's doing this boxing thing, and you see it in those pages. But then, like, in the general public eye, it's like not so much. Like, you don't really see it in the general public. It's just kind of like with an Arohana that we kind of keep it.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. What do you think? Should it be that way? Should we just keep it within our Ohana, or do you think there's something that we could do to try to get it more publicized to the general public? People,
I think now we should get it publicized. Put it out there. Be proud of what we do. And that can only help us. And spread the knowledge. And spread the celebration. Celebrate your students' victories. Celebrate. Oh my God, he just made it to the Olympic qualifiers. Oh my God, they just won a karate world title in Ireland. So I think, and I have to do a better job like that. So I just started doing that. My son just got signed to Belator, multi-fight, exclusive contract. I have to celebrate that stuff. Don't just keep it. Don't be stingy with the celebration. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think there's a difference, right, between being arrogant and being humble. And I think, right, like, I think a lot of us, myself included, I feel like showing, as my instructor said, you want to go out there and get that piece of plastic, you want that piece of metal, then you got to work hard for it. But the way he said that, right, that piece of plastic, that piece of metal, he never called it a gold. He never called it a silver, right? To the point that even when I moved to Japan, I left all my trophies at home. Right. So like I didn't even bring them with me. And right. like I gained, like, maybe I was older when I got out. I probably kept 2 trophies that I got for placing, one for placing second in I called it a what's it called? What's that new gen term that they call participation trophy. I got a participation trophy. I lost that fucking match, man. I got tapped, but I have a participation silver that I put there, and I got another one that I won, and it's still silver, but I won the match. It wasn't a tournament, and those are the only 2 medals in my dojo. And people ask me, "What's that for?" Oh, it's a participation trophy. I told them. But that's just not, like, a lot of our mentality, right, is like, there's this thing that we don't want to be that guy that's like, look at all these medals, look at all these trophies, right? Look how great I am, because the people that came before us are just, we know so many great people, right? That Absolutely. Us, so it feels like we're dishonoring that. But like, I think you made a great point. It's not, there's nothing wrong in celebrating others, right? I think it's one thing to say, this is my trophy. It's another thing to say, hey, this is my student's trophy. This is my student's accomplishment. Not really about the plastic or the metal, like you said before, but this is their accomplishment. Yeah. Like
because
that.
We had a lot of great, like, back in the 90s, like, we had back then in sport karate, the only like Kajukenbo guys that were out there, I mean, Richie Bearfield, I mean, he won the NBL world titles back-to-back, 90, 91. We had Satch Williams back then. We had Damon Gilbert, who's part of my era, you know, one of the great Kajukenbo fighters out there. I mean, there's a lot of them that I thought we could have celebrated a lot better, you know. And I think we got to just do a better job about that. Celebrating your friend, celebrating their accomplishment, you know, because that's what it's all about, is self-growth and growth within our ohana, right?
Yeah.
And it feels good. Like, oh, man, that's good. My boy gave me a shout out, man. Much love, you know. You know, makes you smile. What the hell?
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with smiling.
I always say it costs absolutely nothing to hit share. Yeah. When you see something really cool, I see it all the time, like on Facebook. Hey, look, I really like that technique that my friend, that my boy Roland's doing right there. I like that. I'm going to share that. Like, hey, this is and I would put that, like, this is a Kaju guy from Texas, you know, he did this video, or like, hey, here's Hackelman, he did this really cool thing about how to open up a liver shop. And it costs you nothing, zero, to hit share and let everyone in your network know that this is what this person is doing. Absolutely, bro. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Celebrate each other a lot more, man, and don't get caught up in rank and all that crap, man. Just too goddamn old. We're running out of time. We're running out of time. There's only so much time we got, so many rotations we got on this planet. So that's like, yeah. You know, and I think that's what we could do a lot better for Kajukenbo, man. Fuck all the negative shit, man. Let's put out some happy stuff. You know, some good stuff. So before we wrap up, you mentioned the last fight. Do you just want to let the listeners know where they can find the last fight? Your son fighting? You can find all of it on YouTube, right? I believe it was Belator 266. You know, and Bobby's, I think he's and it's funny, right? His fight got moved up right before the main event, even though he's making his debut. And I totally believe because he has such a big following. You know, so yeah, you can find that stuff on there. You can follow on Bellator Twitter, where they announced him signing a multi-fight deal with Belator. You know, but yeah, his first fight was on, if you just put in Bobby Seronio III MMA, or you can go on YouTube and check out Belator 266. All right. And then if anybody wants to go out, well, when it's possible, when the time comes, if anybody wants to train with you or anything, look up what you're doing, where can they find you online? They can just on Facebook, Seronio Island Bread Martial Arts. Seronio Island Bread Martial Arts. And that's not bread like BREAD, right? That's my yeah.
It's BREZ, bro.
There's that second language thing coming in again. All right, so
Right.
here, I'm gonna. So yeah. So you just check it out, Google it, and definitely check out Bobby's work and his son's work down at.
Say
But Belator.
Belator. Yeah, man. Hey, you guys hit me. Any Kajukenbo folks that want to get, they can always come to my dojo, and I'm open to share my knowledge with them. And if you ever come back to the Bay Area, I got a room for you, bro.
Oh, that's
You and your
awesome.
family can stay at our house and come train on vacation, man.
I'll definitely take you up on that once things open up and I can. I'm under island arrest right now in Japan.
Absolutely, I get that.
Once that's lifted, though, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and just stay your ass there until everything is cool.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm just hiding for now. I just hope when it's all done, I'm not gonna come out and be like, "What fucking year is it?" I mean, like that. What in Jumanji? What year is it?
Right? Oh man.
Well, for my listeners, thank you very much for checking out Social Gelo with Angelo. One big mahalo, and thank you very much to Bobby for coming out and sharing his stories with me. And again, I try to release 2 podcasts a month, and of different. It's about psychology. I should have said this first. This is so I told like a Tarantino flick. By the way, this podcast is about psychology and martial arts. Should have opened with that, but there we are. Thanks for checking it out. Thanks for your support. Thanks to my Kajukenbo Ohana for checking it out. And for the general public, again, you can find this on any podcast platform. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. And I'll catch you all next time. Peace.